Hi, I'm Mike Dang. I'm a severely depressed college student, and what better way to go about it than talking about it to strangers on the internet? Jokes aside, here's a hopefully comprehensive breakdown of how to deal with burnout and feelings of depression in schooling, pre-professional, and everyday life, interspersed with my experiences along the way. There's a trigger warning for mentions of suicide, depression, and eating disorders. Know that I am not a mental health professional, and if you're dealing with mental health problems, please reach out to friends, peers, or reach out to a mental health hotline or professional. I'm a trained crisis counselor, but know that I'm unable to provide full-time support to everyone in the comments below. End of the day, I'm just a full-time student who is juggling interning full-time, schooling full-time, applying to internships, club commitments, among many other things. The too long didn't listen of this is that I'm a college student with high functionally clinical depression, and here's how I could cope with my anxieties up till this point. Feel free to skip around, as for reasons why this video is this long is I'm trying to relate it back to myself in a way not to only help others, but also reflect on my progress in my dealings with mental health and give you a frame of mind that it's not some happy person all the time espousing to people dealings with mental health problems, but instead someone who may have very well been in your shoes and wants to give you advice on how I dealt with it and my problems to this point. Even if you don't suffer from mental health illnesses, I hope this is able to help you. Having said that, let's get started. 1. Disconnect on the weekends. On the weekends, I try not to work, and at most, I will do coffee chats and low commitment things. This allows time for you to recharge from the obligations you have on a week-to-week basis, whether it be school, work, or other commitments. If you're not in a position to do that, then try to schedule regular chunks of time or set aside time for self-care. Don't be busy for busy's sake, because sometimes you can see from hustle culture or more entrepreneurial-minded people that you always need to be on productive, whether it's listening to a career-related podcast, attending the latest conference, and or keeping up to date with everything in your field of study. While that's important and everything, don't make your day so busy that your calendar is just a rainbow grid like back to back. Instead, set aside chunks of time just to rest, because I say this because within reason, I've been busy enough where I'm like in a given week with some obligations, I try to quote unquote prioritize my time to eat while in class or working to try to squeeze more out of my time. While I manage my time rather well for the most part, I think it makes sense to rest while resting, work while working, otherwise you'll burn out, as that's a huge reason why I'm documenting this for research to help others in the future, as I'm rather burned out at this very moment. 2. Have hobbies. I get it, applying to jobs is a full-time job in itself, whether it's coordinating times to apply, do mock interviews, go to company events. When it comes down to it, have these non-career related hobbies where you just do something, anything, because it's often easy to fall into a trap that everything needs to do with contributing to yourself in one which way or another. That's certainly not the case. I played some mindless video games before where I really just need a pastime or just a virtual world to dive into, just escape from my problems to an extent at the moment. At the same time, don't overindulge yourself in them, as if your life is very busy and things like video games or of the sort consumes a lot of time when you're otherwise preoccupied with like important things. Try to maintain a time to which you do both. I've definitely set aside the amount of time where video games seem to consume my life when I felt like I had no active supports in my life. 3. Take care of yourself. I get it. With Zoom University or having a mostly remote workspace, given the nature of the pandemic, it's really easy to just wear loungewear most days and just wear the same thing like day after day. Not shower, not brush your teeth, not do the most basic hygiene. And because after leaving the house, nobody's going to be setting reminders for you to like look your best. You might be wondering, why should I really care, given the nature of not seeing anyone and not needing to do any of this at this time? I generally try to, in order to look and feel the part, even though I may not be doing anything in a physical classroom or work setting, because end of the day, you're still doing work, so you might as well put in some effort towards taking care of yourself. Because from speaking from experience, when my depression hit it hit bad. It was endless streaks of showing up disheveled, looking unkempt, running on poor sleep, poor hygiene, and everything in order, but just a charisma score of 1 to 10, just looking at -1, and you look like an absolute mess at the end of the day. As I mentioned, sleep and nutrition, because ultimately, these will be the things fueling you for the day and allowing you to recharge. Be wary of the amount of sugar you take in with each particular day, and try to regularly hydrate and get a reasonable amount of sleep. Not too much, not too little with these things. I get it, I'm not your mom, but I'm just saying this as my experiences from my bouts of depression, where I either ate too much, too little, slept too much, slept too little, just did not keep up with my grooming, but I'm glad I'm better now. 4. Don't dwell on things. Sometimes things go poorly, other times horrifically, sometimes even disastrously. Now, having said that in mind, it's really easy for you to revisit previous trauma in your head and replay it time after time of how you could've, should've, and just wish you'd have approached it in a different way or manner, or like a million times around. That quickly becomes unhealthy, and after a while, I find that it's better for you to compartmentalize that and leave a maximum of a certain amount of time for each day to think about or reflect on, as if you leave too much headspace to these issues that are triggering or bothersome to you, that is a huge time sink. That is a considerable waste of time for you, because you cannot control or change things that occurred in the past, but can only take the learnings from it and move on to changing your behavior from then on out. I say this as my depression has made me lose control of myself, and at times lose the grip of who I am, and I don't blame it on my depression or my antidepressants or some external factor. Actions I've taken in the past that, looking back, I am ashamed of are a result of myself, my own actions, and I have no one else to blame but myself due to this point. There's no finger to point towards a lack of familial upraising due to busy parents, or lack of role model or peers due to lack of siblings or friend groups. I hate myself oftentimes, but I try to move on with the hand I'm dealt, and I try to proactively act to improve myself and try to help others. 5. Put aside things you cannot control. Following up on last point, I sometimes dwell on things I cannot change in circumstances. Had I been able to change my tone of my responses or other opportunities were I to approach them differently at a certain time. This extends to interpersonal relationships too, because if you're met with a conflict and you have to deal with something you have to apologize, but at the end of the day, if that apology is not accepted, there's nothing you can really do about it. You can bow your head in apology for as much as you want, but if you hurt your image and nobody receives or is receptive to your apology, at the end of the day, that's an unfortunate situation altogether that you're going to have to move on from. Another extension of this, pertains to me at least, is that I'm a people person. I'm a rather extroverted person who likes to seek the validation of others. Not to validate my feelings and sense of self-worth, but because I enjoy helping others at the end of the day, because that's where I get satisfaction in my life. Sometimes you do your best and people may be disappointed, and that is something you will have to accept. 6. Meet people. I say this both in a networking and a friend front too. When it comes down to networking, I don't just get in so I can get something out of it from someone. At the end of the day, I wonder if I can help someone, and even if I don't get anything in return, it's okay, because I'm in it for helping people. What you get with meeting people is to possibly come across people under similar circumstances. From there, you can help one another, whether it's in terms of being accountability buddies, in terms of alerting one another, in terms of opportunities that pop up, helping them troubleshoot other setbacks, goals they're trying to achieve, and more. And as a result, you may help them in a professional casual front. Here's a warning though. When you meet these new people, set your boundaries. What I mean by that is that people have varying levels of comfort from the get-go. You meet them based off where you meet them, how you met them, whether you met them for mutual student orgs, friends, interests. The list goes on for the nature of these engagements. Is it a coffee chat, a casual hangout? The list goes on. Up on the screen, you'll see a circle of trust, but realize that people at the end of the day, they have a variety of people they trust that goes from their inner circle, of which includes friends they're most comfortable with, to the outer circle, which is heavily strangers. For example, I've had coffee chats where people ask for my contact and or Facebook to just message me through Messenger or iMessage. I'm rather receptive to that, but know that love doesn't fit the same for everyone. For for some people, they just give that out to their inner circle, and you have to be respectful of that. Don't drive people into an uncomfortable position, because at the end of the day, they may ignore you and or push you out of their life. 7. Minimize engagement in self-destructive activities. By that, I mean don't do drugs, don't drink, or do anything like really maladaptive in terms of your activities wise that ultimately hurt progress. I'm not your parent and I don't know your experiences with drugs or alcohol, but just know your limits and your tolerance when it comes to these things. Beyond that, there's also social media. It falls under a gray zone for me because while apps like Instagram and LinkedIn drain my energy, they also allow me to keep in touch with my peers and get to know people. As for other self-destructive activities, I previously ate a bunch of food to cope with the circumstances of rejection. I would go on binges that would shortly give me a dopamine fix, but then cancel those out with days and days of fasting, rather than just resuming a normal schedule of eating. This would be coupled with a disordered eating pattern of intermittent fasting that I picked up, which resulted in long times of either hunger, fasting, followed by eating. At the same time, for some people, their issue of food can be leveraged as a point which they eat out of boredom in lieu of not having too many hobbies, and they find joy in this time. Right now, I find joy in lifting, running, and all these exercises I do. Whether it's runner's high, breaking PR or previous record setting in terms of breaking pace, surpassing weights you lift in the gym or in the comfort of your home. And 8, don't measure your progress against others. You don't know anyone else's path in life, as oftentimes social media showcases the highlight reel of people's lives. It's easy to see people just posting these highlights, but you don't know how people are beyond the screen. People might be severely depressed beyond that, and you really don't know. Instead, aim to improve little by little for yourself every day. I say this as a LinkedIn power user who I see day by day people make posts sounding off on their internship secured or their double or triple back-to-back offer. And you know what? Good on them. They're proud to share that, and they're in their full right to. Your takeaways from those posts shouldn't be, damn, they did it, but why can't I? But instead could be reframed as, damn, they did it. I can ask them for resources as to how they went about it, or ask for a general inquiry. I try to help when I can and hope you might be able to do the same for others. While that's the case, you also do not know the full circumstances of people and their place in life, as previously mentioned. For example, I grew up in a heavy magnet school where high schoolers had the opportunity to intern at Bloomberg, you heard that right, Bloomberg, a top tech firm of which students were able to go there for a summer or two and possibly extending it to their collegiate studies as a whole if they put in the due diligence. To untrained eye, people will be like, dang, how did you intern at Bloomberg in high school? Where in reality, they lived in a community growing up where they were afforded those opportunities, and then when they put in the work. 9, don't equate your self-worth with career. This is stemming from the last point, as many of you may be viewing this on LinkedIn or tuning in as this channel was rather career focused. Realize that in your peer circle, when you see everyone else landing these big offers and you're still stuck with nothing, it can be really mind-boggling and stressful. Skip ahead if you do not want to listen to what lies ahead in this bullet, as this one pains me most to say that others do not, but this one in particular stings. I say this because I relate to this as I've been in your shoes. I currently am. I've been fortunate enough to have opportunities in the product space, whether in PM, UX research, UI UX design. While that might be the case, they've been a mix of unpaid, getting stipends, getting contractual and paid work. I work in between. At this point, I've applied to over 600 places, landed over 50 interviews, and I am still interviewing because I have not found an opportunity for this summer as of yet. I've been easily hit with over 100 rejections, ghosts altogether. I even had an anticipated phone call where I had to be hit with a sorry, we had found a better candidate at this point. Even given the sincerity of a phone call for a rejection, this felt like a punch to the stomach because that's interspersed with a mix of like, opportunities where I fit the bill with what they're looking for, having done every responsibility that was requested of me, and being told I'd be a good fit. Because these words ultimately meant nothing to me until I signed a piece of paper where my offer was secured. Because I'm really nervous because I'm just afraid I'm paying $100K plus with a degree just be scavenging for a job come my time of graduation. It's been dealing with this since August around now, and run through the gamut of every single type of interview altogether and trying to craft a way to adopt to it, because at this rate no two interview is the same, because no two interviewers are the same and no two companies are the same. There's only one me, but hundreds of companies I have to scout out and sell myself to for the comprehensive background research for all of this I write cover letters for. It's been a challenge for me due to my inflection and tone of voice, because I've been told by hiring managers in big tech, by mentors, by my peers, that while I know what I'm doing, that it doesn't amount to much, because when you step on the plate and you perform poorly in your tone and pitch, even if you're personal upon your best version of yourself in terms of like having a conversation, not being interrogating, it's been a hit to my ego, because in terms of it, I do everything, but my pitch is not good because of my voice. Because I've even helped people land offers, but I at wit's end because of my tone and pitch of voice and sounding disinterested as a result. Because when people get to know me, they know that I'm not this deadpan voice sort of guy, which it works well in comedic settings, but in an interview it kills you. Is having said all this, this culture ties back to this toxic culture where sometimes you find in online communities or forums a whole slew of people gunning for these top positions and places, and you may feel inadequate when you have nothing to show for it, nothing to flex. But that's just my ego speaking at the end of the day. Realize you're a human at the end of the day, with your own hobbies, with your own interests and pastime outside of the work setting. So at the end of the day, you might not get the job of your choice come straight out of undergrad, and that is perfectly okay. Because there's still years to pivot, even entirely redefine what it is you want to do with your degree and your career as a whole. 10. Seek therapy. Perhaps you follow all these practices and still are doing bad. I would honestly seek out therapy, as therapists are mental health professionals who are equipped to help you vent about these problems more in life. I recognize that friends, your peer group, are your support system, but talking to mental health professionals allow you to have first-hand experience to resources on how you can help yourself. Having said that, therapy isn't a quick fix to these things, but allows you to pinpoint possible areas of concern and things you need to eventually work on, and someone you can check in on the regular. My experiences have been good for the most part, but within reason it has not been so much, as my therapist has been regurgitating how I've improved in the past few years, have made a bunch of progress, and while that is true, I've made a bunch of progress, but I felt like that invalidates my current problems, as they are trapping me to the past by saying, oh wow Mike, you've made it so far, without regard with how I am in the present and how possibly this shapes me up for the future in my given moment and circumstance. 11. Do not kill yourself. I say this in a metaphorical and literal way. In a position, if you're looking to kill yourself, please seek support from your peer circle, your support network. If those are not adequate, please dial a mental health hotline and follow instructions from there. I've previously been hospitalized for reasons I will not divulge at this point, but led me to heavily reevaluate my life moving forward, as if I would have stayed there, it would have been the rest of my life, living in a dormitory prison cell, which every day I would be afforded only a certain level of sunlight, with the day only changing to eat food, do some therapy related to whether it's art, pet, etc. For that would be my experience until I would be let out through an appeal in a court if I was involuntarily there, or after 2 weeks if I was voluntary. It was an experience of scary afterthought when I had been hospitalized. It had been time of the Parkland shooting, and I had been sat in front of the television watching the aftermath of that unfold in real time. They talked about how the shooter was mentally unstable and should have been sent to something like I had been at the time. It really sent chills down my spine that could have been the very last people heard of me. locked up in a hospital, with the key thrown away only for people to see me once in a blue moon, in a prison visit arrangement every now and then. Today, my life has changed, for I know that that was my life's rock bottom, and that I can only go up from here. And know that at the end of the day, you can hit highs and lows, but as long as you're headed in the right direction, you're good to go. Now, if you made it up till this point, I applaud you for listening to it through, and or even skipping around and making it to this point. If you have any questions, any feedback, and or need someone to listen to about your problems, my inbox is always open, but realize that I may be busy with school and or work. This is the first time I am this transparent about my mental health as a whole. This is the end of me talking about a chunk of my problems to this point, as there is a good chance you go on YouTube for entertainment media and not to hear a guy vent about his problems. I hope that there were some good takeaways here, even if you skip the parts of me relating it back to how I have experienced things. Being a college student with like high functioning clinical depression and how I deal with it to process like emotions and etc. But then again, that's how I deal with it in an interpersonal relationship and more. But I hope you learned something from this. But as always, don't forget to be awesome.